Started. We've got a good packed presentation today. So thank you all for being here. This is the third installment of our Student Development Seminar Series. If you have not had a chance to sign in, please do so. We'll also post the QR code again at the end for anybody who may have missed it. But I am thrilled for you all to be here. I'm excited to introduce Roberta Douglas from Career Services, who is working on a lot of this for her master's program. So once again, we're drawing on expertise with one of our staff members to get to talk about this topic. So I will turn it over to Roberta.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Roberta, like John Mark just said. Grab this clicker here. I have been in career services for about 10 years. Have worked in the career education field for almost 20 now, although I don't often like to say that out loud because it feels weird, right? But I'm currently working on a master's program. In my life, I have been very excited about community engagement and service work throughout my entire life. And so when I had the opportunity to bridge service and community engagement, civic engagement to careers and career progression and career decision-making processes, it was a perfect fit for my master's program in HESA, Higher Education Leadership Studies. And so excited to be here today to talk about this specifically because it really does kind of bridge two of my most exciting adventures in life. So thanks for having us here today, and we'll just dive right in. On today's agenda, we are going to talk about student development and civic engagement and the importance of community and being engaged in the community, and what does that look like, and what are the multitude of ways that an individual can be engaged in the community and how that helps them develop. We're going to dive into the experiential learning framework so that you can understand and recognize what that is, what that means, and all of, again, the different opportunities for those experiences. We will take a look at another university and some of the exciting things that they're doing to help students, and we will translate that into OSU and what's happening here on our campus and how you can plug into that and help students plug into that. We'll talk a lot about, throughout the course of the next hour, we'll talk a lot about best practices, small things that you can do in your interactions with students, and then big, programming things that you can do, and kind of everything in between. And then, of course, we will tie everything that we're talking about to students' future careers, right? Because at the end of the day, once they leave us, they're going to be fully developed and have all the skills in the world and incredibly knowledgeable in their trade or their industry, and they're going to need a job, right? So we want to make sure that what we are doing and what we are developing for them or with them, alongside them, each of the students that we work with will help them land well in their next step. So let's get started. So let's first talk about the value of service and civic engagement, because no student development seminar can start without research, right? All right. So get excited. So I have some information up here on the board for you guys. George Kaw is very well known in student development theory, and he has done several studies throughout the course of his professional career, academic career as well, about the co-curricular experiences that students participate in and how they impact them moving forward. So that first quote that you can read up there or a statement is out of the classroom experiences such as volunteerism, campus residency, student employment, study abroad, travel have long been identified as vital enhancements to personal development. And so that's a very, it's been continuously proven, it's been well researched. I recognize that is from 1995, and that's a little old. I recognize that. So I jumped into more recent from George Kaw, and it's very similarly found. So again, recognizing co-curricular activities, the student access on a campus and what those look like, and the positive results from those interactions. The third one that we have there is student learning is deepened and enriched by engagement with community. So Koritz et al. Did a study and has written about civic professionalism and civic engagement, right? And how ties with the community and engaging that into academics and into activities really enhances what the student is going to do and develop personally as they move through their college career and beyond. Our final piece there is from an article from Musil in 2015, and it is, again, very similarly lined out that civic engagement can enhance the student development experience and of course their professional career development experience later. So have those sources for you guys because again, we love research and we love background. And it's important for us to know as career development professionals, as student development professionals, that looking at the research and understanding what has been studied and what has been out there, what has been examined, is important for us to know as we're working with students day to day. But why is this important? Why is civic engagement and service engagement important for us here at OSU? Because we're a land-grant university, right? And we were founded on these principles. And so I'll let you read our core values. I'm sure we're all very familiar with these. But service and civic engagement, diversity and leadership are all tied into our core values. And so as student development practitioners and student affairs professionals, we should know these are goals for our university. And so anything we can do to help promote what this looks like for our students that we're working with is really important. Oh, this is you.
Yeah, so what we want to talk about really for our students is how do we help students make meaning out of their experiences? So they are going and having these great community service, community engagement opportunities, experiences, and a lot of times we just sort of leave it at that, right? We say, we have gotten you this experience, we've gotten you this program, we assume you've probably learned something out of it, but don't necessarily do a great job always of closing the loop for our students. Conversely, our students are also engaged in experiences that are incredibly rich and deep and meaningful without meaning to. They are sort of accidentally getting these really great developmental experiences. So for instance, it's no surprise to anybody who has driven down University that homecoming is about to happen in a couple of weeks, right? We see these massive structures go up as our fraternities and sororities prepare for walk-arounds. Students sign up, they run for an office, a position in their organization to manage their organization's homecoming involvement for various reasons. Maybe they love homecoming, maybe they love their fraternity or sorority, and maybe they really are activating that competition strength, but aren't necessarily going into that experience thinking, I am going to do this experience because of all of the great things I'm going to learn. Our opportunity then is to help close that loop. Help them at the end of it, sit down and think about, well, what did you learn? How can you translate the skills that you acquired by organizing 300 19 and 20-year-olds to spend thousands of hours pumping, building these metal structures, getting people to do things like motivating people to do something they may not actually want to do. Those are real, tangible skills that you can translate into the workplace, that you can translate into the rest of your career here at OSU. But without helping them sort of close that loop, close that gap, that learning may not actually happen. And the other thing for our students, we know that students are coming to us here at OSU because they want to get involved, they want to get engaged. They want to make a difference here on campus, they want to make a difference in the communities. And so the more that we can message what a student will learn inside and outside of the classroom, the more attractive we will be for students to come to campus. Next month, our installment of the Student Development Seminar Series is all about generational differences and Generation Z. Dr. Robinson is going to be doing that along with Dr. McClinton and Dr. Gage. So I don't want to I guess a spoiler alert, Gen Z wants to get involved. They want to make a difference, right? So the more that we can help them see what they can do here to make a difference, the more likely they're going to want to come to OSU. So Roberta talked about some theory earlier. I also have some favorite theories. You don't get a doctorate in education without developing some favorite theories along the way. And this is one of my all-time absolute favorites. And it's Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Now this one is from the 80s. So yeah, that 90s reference was old. This one is even older. But it stands up. So what Kolb did was help us understand, how do people actually learn? What is the cycle by which somebody takes an experience, makes meaning out of it, and that meaning actually leads to development, learning, and growth? So he came up with this experiential learning cycle, and it really starts right here with concrete experience. I have an experience, right? I lead in an organization. I used this a lot when I was running summer camps, and we're on a challenge course, right? So I have this experience of working with my group to accomplish a goal. And that's just it. It's an experience. It's not a deep learning. It doesn't have to be this sort of invasive seminar or something like that. It is a concrete and real experience. What happens to make meaning out of that, or to help learn, this second step is crucial: reflective observation. In order to learn from the experience, what I have to do is sit back and reflect on what that experience was. I have to think about what happened, how did I respond, how did somebody else respond, and was that successful? So most of you know I have a 2.5-year-old daughter that I talk about shamelessly all of the time. I am engaged in a constant feedback loop of what happened and was it successful, because you get instantaneous response over, oh, it turns out that even though you said you wanted applesauce, when I gave you the applesauce, you actually did not want applesauce. And so that has been an important lesson for both of us in negotiating and navigating our relationship. But it's also a very frustrating experience. And if I just leave it at that experience, then I'm not learning anything from it. What I have to do is reflect and think about, well, what were the conditions? What was happening? Why did we change our minds so quickly? Was it because when I went to get the applesauce, I saw the goldfish and I realized that that's actually what I wanted? Was it because the dog walked into the room and I realized I wanted to squeeze him instead? Like, what was it that created those conditions for change in that moment? So it's taking that experience of, I'm frustrated because you gave me the applesauce I asked for, and thinking about what is actually the meaning, what's actually going on, taking those pauses to really reflect on the meaning behind that experience. The third stage, abstract conceptualization, then, is your hypothesis about what will happen next time. So I've had this experience. I spent some time reflecting on what was good about it, what was bad about it, what I might be able to take from it. Now I'm going to go to some ideas about how I might do that better next time, or what I could do differently, or what I should expect if this scenario happens again. So given the same circumstance, what might I do, or what can I expect to have happen? So in this case, I as a parent have learned, if we have agreed that you're going to get applesauce, I'm going to get that applesauce in such a way that you will not see the goldfish crackers. Because I have learned that that's a trigger, right? And if I can keep you from seeing them, we're not going to argue about getting them. So it's taking that concrete experience, taking the things that I have reflected on from that experience and making a hypothesis about what might happen next. And then it's active experimentation, right? It is testing that hypothesis. It is creating those situations in such a way that I'm able to draw on that learning, that I'm able to actively think about that learning that I had, and think about how I might do things differently or how I might change. And I love this because that active experimentation then moves into your next concrete experience, and you just keep growing and you keep learning from your experiences. But the reason why I think this is so important to talk about is we are really, really good in higher education about this one. We provide lots of concrete experience. I think we're also pretty good about the abstract conceptualization, helping students imagine what they want or where they want to go, helping them think about how things might get better, move forward for them. Where we have a real opportunity to grow is in this reflective observation. How do we help students really sit down, reflect? How do we ask them questions in such a way to help them make meaning out of those experiences that they can then act on to build, to continue to learn?
We are going to use those that experiential learning kind of framework and really kind of carry it through the rest of what we'll share, because as you heard, reflection is a huge piece of helping students learn and grow, and really kind of engage in their meaning making, their difference making, their change making. And so helping them have those experiences, not just have those experiences, but also recognize them and reflect on them is really where it's where the big aha moments are going to come for a student in their development process. And by the way, they won't know that they're developing, right? We call it student development, but to them it's like, this is my experience, right? So just kind of keeping that in mind. As I work with students, I really try hard not to use phrases like that because they're like, what? Yeah, right? So keeping that in mind. So again, I work with career services, or work for career services, and so this is something that we work through a lot with students. Helping them understand and recognize that everything that they are doing, everything that they are experiencing, can lead to a career decision-making process. It can help them through that process, right? So helping a student look at those activities, look at those events, look at those events that they're engaged in, those clubs, those groups, those organizations. Where are your interests and what do you enjoy doing? If you can find where your interests, your skills, your personality, and your values, I'm going to use the word collide, where they interlap or they overlap, that's where you're going to have the best career success. That's where you're going to find that job that you love and really help yourself be in a place where you're using your strengths, in a place where you're using your talents and your skills as best possible. So as student development professionals, in student affairs, we really need to understand what a student can ask them questions about their personality, about what they enjoy doing, help them self-reflect on what they're doing, and is that working? Do you enjoy going to meetings in the morning at 8 a.m.? Because some people love it and some people don't at all. Do you value working alone and on a computer, or do you really enjoy getting out and going to those meetings and meeting all the new people? And so we're kind of looking at personality types and personality styles. But students tend to just do these things and participate in activities and events without really thinking about why they're doing it, right? Just like John Mark said, they don't go into it thinking, what am I going to learn today? How is this going to enhance my personality? How is this going to make me a better coordinator, right? They don't go into it with the anticipation that that's what they're learning, but they certainly are learning that. So the more conversations that you can have with your students about their experiences and help them kind of tie to, is this something you enjoy? Could this be a career path for you? Or is this something you enjoy? What are the skills that you're learning there that can help you in your career path, right? And so those are conversations that we have with students a lot in our department. But there's no scientific reasoning to it necessarily, right? Anybody can do this. Anybody can open the conversation with a student that just says, what did you learn from that? Is that something you would carry forward? You liked working in communications, right? But you didn't like doing the data, right? Let's talk about what that could look like for you in your career. And we know that most career conversations don't happen with a career services professional, right? They happen with an advisor. They happen with a professor. They happen with a group leader, a mentor. And so the more empowered you feel to have these kinds of conversations with students, the better off we're going to be in preparing our students for what's coming next for them and their future. However, when you're ready to say, we've done all this exploring, we've had these conversations, and you're really ready to move beyond their self-assessment, we have some tools on our campus. And I added the Career Services logo here because that's where you go. higheroceangrads.com is where the student can go to learn about each of these assessments. We have trained professionals across campus who are certified to host these, to do one-on-one meetings with students, to host these in groups just like this one where they can take assessments and then unpack their results. But we have 6 different assessments that help a student get to some of these things, right? Not some of these things, all of these things. Their personality, their skills, their interests, and their values to really kind of put pen to paper, if you will, where the student can do an assessment. And again, we can help them unpack that. So if your student is ready to move beyond just conversations, and I think maybe, and this could be a thing, I don't know, right? Let us help with that because we're happy to do that. Yes?
Do you think this would be, so I'm a mentor on campus, or Mentor Collective, and I was curious, do you think this would be a good tool to advise mentees for determining their major?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. There are several, these are 6 assessments that we host. There's another one on campus that is tied specifically to OSU majors, and that's through the Office of Admissions. It's called My Majors.
Okay.
And so that is another great tool. These top 3 up here are absolutely free, no cost. They are best, the student would be best served if they take it and then meet with someone to talk about it. but they can be internally unpacked by a student. They're really self-explanatory and easy to use. These bottom three do have a $15 cost attached to them, and for those results, they certainly would have to meet with somebody. They would be best served to meet with somebody and unpack that and really kind of dig deep into what those results look like. So you've got several different levels of understanding and ease of use. So it really kind of, the focus too actually is also tied to OSU majors. And so there's some really good information there. But again, all web-based, all of these are web-based, right? Those top three, they just need an OSU email address, right? And so encourage a student if you've done the basics and had some self-reflection and had some group reflection, right? If they're ready to go a little deeper, these are great options for them. And again, Career Services is all across campus. We are in the central office here in the Student Union, but there is a Career Services professional in every college across campus. And some colleges have multiple, and so all of us are trained to help unpack these in a one-on-one setting or a group setting. So let us know how we can help. Again, free to students, except the $15 high cost, the big cost ones that have a cost attached to them. So, any other questions about assessments and what those look like in the career development process? We really love assessments. So, I mean, they're great. They help a student get to the bottom of who they are, where they can be successful, what their talents are, and where they should kind of focus in on their areas.
So I have a question about Clifton Strengths. We have a couple programs that we do administer strengths. So if the student already has their strengths, can they come to the career and say, here's my top 5?
Absolutely,
and they have a career conversation?
Yes, the student should have a report of their results, and they can bring that in and have a meeting with one of our coordinators that would be happy to walk them through what that looks like. Absolutely. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit from assessment and kind of career development and start looking a little bit at student development as it relates to student employment. So part of my role in Career Services is I get to help students find part-time jobs, and I also get to help them recognize the value of that part-time job and how that carries forward for them into their full-time experiences. OSU Student Affairs, Division of Student Affairs, began an initiative. We launched a pilot last spring called OSU GROW. And GROW stands for Guided Reflection on Work. They're capitalized for a reason. And through the OSU GROW program, again, last spring we piloted with about 50 students, 4 different departments within Student Affairs. And what we did, we launched literal conversations between supervisor and student employee. So at specific touch points throughout a semester, a boss sits down with their student and says, how's it going? How is this tied to your academics? What are you learning here that's helping you in the classroom? What are you learning in the classroom that's helping you at work? What is not in alignment? How can I help and walk you through that? So again, it's just that feedback loop that John Mark talked about just a minute ago. It's that process of reflection. And again, tying work life to school life. They also are interacting with their supervisor, and we all know that student engagement with a mentor, a supervisor, a boss, a coach helps a student feel that sense of belonging, helps them recognize that OSU cares about them, and so this has been a really good experience for those students and for those supervisors. So what it's doing is it's helping them grow and develop these skills that you see down on the bottom there. Those are skills that obviously employers are always going to want from them, whether they're being hired for an internship, a full-time job, in their part-time job. These are the skills that employers again and again have identified as overarching and regardless of industry, right? It doesn't matter if you're working in engineering or if you're working in social services. These are some skills that you are going to need. And these are highly valued skills by employers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. So through the OSU GROW program, we again help students who are participating in student employment in a level of experiential learning, or one of the aspects of experiential learning. That part-time job is really helping them grow and develop as a professional. And these are some of the results we took, or we gained from that. And I just pulled 2 from our list of, I don't know however many that was, what's that, 10 or so? I pulled 2 that were pretty important and pretty impactful. So the student goes through the semester and they interact with their supervisor. They have reflective conversations with their supervisor twice a semester. And then at the end of the semester, they get a survey about their experience and what did they gain and how did they show gains. And so this was from last semester, or this past spring semester. And it says, my job helped me improve my verbal communication skills. Again, every employer in the world is going to want good verbal communication skills, right? And so this was one of the ones that was really impacted. And so you can see in their part-time job, they were able to reflect and recognize that this was a skill that was gained for them. The next chart that I pulled here was because of my job, I'm able to work effectively with others from different backgrounds and cultures than my own. This is a really big one that we are seeing more and more, not just across campus, but across industries in our country. Employers want to know that you can interact with folks who are different from yourself, right? Our bosses want to know that. Every boss wants to know that. And so students are very well served if they recognize that now and they start to build those interactions with folks around them that, again, are different from themselves. Building those multicultural competencies starts now. Should start from, this big, right? 2 years old. But at the end of the day, anything that we can do on our campus to enhance those multicultural competencies in our students is going to benefit them in the long run. And that can be in a part-time job. Obviously, that can be in a classroom, right? But that is much further than just the classroom. It should be in all areas of their lives. So that was really exciting to see the positive impact here. So this is just some information about student employees and student employment in general, what we know about student workers or student employees. When a student has a part-time job during college, they're more likely to persist. They are more likely to gain job skills, right? And then what we know at OSU is kind of what I just said a minute ago. They're more likely to feel engaged, and they're more likely to have a greater sense of purpose. So really important information. The final piece down here is that reflection and goal realization. Again, a little bit like what John Mark talked about. It's that cycle of recognizing what they're doing, what their impact is, how are they getting to make a difference, how is what their actions are right now impacting them and those around them for their future. That's really important for student employees. Does anybody have any questions about this? Again, student employment is something that I've been doing for a little while now, and I really enjoy helping students recognize that you're not just operating a cash register, right? You're interacting with folks. You are participating in communication and skills enhancement. And so helping them recognize what those skills are that they're gaining may not seem applicable in this moment, but it certainly will help them build as they move through their experience. All right, we're going to shift gears just a little bit now and talk about another college. The University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I had the opportunity to do an internship with them this summer and their Center for Democracy and Civic Life. And it was an amazing internship. It was virtual, of course. But what I learned a lot about was this idea of co-creating. You guys heard about co-creating? Seen a few, I don't know. So co-creating is the process of helping a student not simply be a bystander in decision-making, not simply be kind of along for the ride and like all of these things are happening to me or all of these things are happening for me. Co-creating is the process of engaging students in making things happen, right? Making a difference, being a change maker. And there is a career practitioner, Harry Boyte, B-O-Y-T-E. He is an amazing practitioner, and civic professionalism is his area of expertise. And so this co-create is largely recognized within his sphere of professional study, but that is something that the Center for Democracy and Civic Life at UMBC leans on a lot. And so they've done some really cool things to help their students feel that they are engaged and a part of that civic life, that civic involvement. And when we say civic life, we're not just talking about making sure students are going to vote, right? Civic life is as simple as empowering students to recognize that they can make small differences in big ways. For example, what I heard this week, interviewing with a student, they, in their cafeteria and their dorm, one of their favorite flavors of ice cream was discontinued by the staff. Nobody was excited about that, so they started a petition, they did some things, they hosted some meetings, right? They took action to reverse that, and they got birthday cake ice cream flavor relaunched in their dorm. So it could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as helping a student recognize in their professional world, if they want the water cooler to come back, here's what you need to do. Here's how you can have conversations. Here's how you can advocate for yourself and your peers to really make that change and make a difference for the area, the space in which you are inhabiting. So Co-Create is a really exciting opportunity. We see it happening a lot on our campus, and John Mark's going to talk a little bit more about that after we watch this real short video. Actually, it's not a short video. It's 10 minutes long, but we're not going to watch all 10 minutes. So I note that we are at 10:35, so we'll probably go about 5 minutes on this and then jump into our next phase. But again, this is a video that they created about co-creating, right? And how their students are impacting so many different facets of their campus. And we'll look at how that's happening here.
What will you see when you encounter the UMBC campus and experience its programs? One thing you will see is paved footpaths across the grounds and among the buildings. You might view them simply as walkways. But what if we told you that they are more than walkways? That the first students who attended UMBC created these paths by choosing how they walked between buildings and across campus. Architects didn't decide where these walkways would go. UMBC students did, with their feet. The paving came later. If you're new to this community, it might be easy to assume that everything you will see is finished and always has been exactly like it is now. But in fact, UMBC is ever changing. It is built every day by the members of this community, faculty, staff, and students. Every space and every tradition at UMBC has a story. And many of these stories include students as founders, creators, advocates, people who had a vision and saw it through. There isn't always a plaque to mark the spot where students made an important contribution. But the stories of those contributions are incredibly important. They tell you how and why initiatives, programs, and spaces exist in the way they do, and reveal a lot about what makes UMBC special and what it means to be a student here. So here are some stories to inspire you to leave your mark and become an active participant in co-creating UMBC. In his first year at UMBC, in 2004 to 2005, Thomas LaCastro said, "We should light an enormous fire and invite everyone to watch." He spent most of his first year gradually building support for the idea, which involved working with students and with staff from numerous campus offices, none of whom started out eager to build a big fire. But he was persistent, and he followed through. He had the privilege of lighting the very first homecoming bonfire the following year. It was very small, and it burned out before the sun even set. But we got better at building bonfires. Now they're really big and impressive. The event has become an annual homecoming tradition, and Thomas has yet to miss one. The garden started as the dream of Jack Newmeyer, Juliana Brightman, Kelsey Donlin, Andres Camacho, and other students who wanted to create a community garden on campus that would serve as a catalyst for change, empowerment, wellness, and sustainability. They envisioned student organizations claiming plots and having their members get together to work on them. They imagined classes and research projects taking place there too. However, a community garden wasn't in UMBC's plans, and an earlier attempt to establish a garden had been unsuccessful. So the students had conversations with people to get them excited about their vision. and helped everyone see the value of what they had in mind. They won a grant from the Student Government Association to get the project started.
So the garden, on one level we have a lot of people who are building. They're kind of creating their campus physically, so we're at UMBC. And we have a Burmese refugee family here that's coming from a nonprofit that we're partnered with. We have students, we have staff, we have faculty, and there are people who very concretely are growing food on their campus, physically creating the structures around that. But really, the point of the project is to enable people to see their campus as something that they create in the most abstract sense.
Now, anyone in the UMBC community can apply for a garden plot. That's one of the beautiful things about the garden. It is always unfinished, and anyone within the UMBC community can contribute to it. It was very small.
Okay. Yes. All right.
So don't be surprised if you see an OSU version of this video coming around at some point. Colton will be talking about that. I also love it when you get a room full of student affairs risk management folks together and you mention homecoming bonfires. Very strong reaction to that.
I'm also thinking marijuana and those growing.
And then if you threw the marijuana into the bonfire, I think it's just a whole other tradition.
Maryland, Oklahoma.
Yes. But I love this video because I do think it's so easy for us, for students, to think of an institution as a very static thing, right? Like this is the place that I have come into. Instead of really thinking about this is a place that we can co-create together, and we can build and change. And what we're talking about, I think, is so well encapsulated by Jack in the garden, who says, look around and see what people are doing is this, they're building a garden. And he says, but what they're actually doing is this higher level thing, right? And that's the point of all of this. Helping students take a concrete experience and make higher level meaning out of it, I think is our opportunity. So when we want to think about how do we help students do that, our first opportunity is in the questions that we ask. So as they are talking about their experiences, as they're talking about what they want to do, how they want to do it, asking the questions that are going to help them get there. So I think next semester, as part of this series, I think we may do a session on facilitation skills, because I'm realizing that that's a good, important skill for us to develop. But we will talk about how do you help students, how do you craft questions in such a way that helps students really make meaning out of those experiences and sort of lead them to where they can do those higher level thinking. Next is connecting to resources. So one of the things that I see happens to student leaders all of the time, and on several campuses that I've seen, students have ideas. They have really great ideas, things that they want to do, and they think, first of all, I'm the first person in the history of the world to have ever had this idea to do this thing. And two, I have to do this by if I don't do this myself, this thing is not going to happen. And what happens then is we spin off a lot of iterations of the same thing, and things don't become sustainable. So I think when we're working with students who want to co-create, our opportunity is to connect them to the resources and the folks on campus who can help them make those things long-term and sustain really well with that. The other thing, so Roberta talked about some things that we have seen students co-create on campus. Our basic needs initiatives would be a great example of that, right? It's been an initiative between faculty, staff, and students to come together to talk about how do we address this concern of student food insecurity. And what's been cool about that is something that has been co-created because it's been a partnership between students, faculty, and staff. Faculty members have provided us access and research and knowledge and expertise. Students have had the drive, and then staff has been able to implement it. And so we are going to, hopefully later this semester, open in this building an on-campus permanent food pantry, Pete's Pantry, in the basement of the student union in partnership with Our Daily Bread. And that is a brand new thing, but it's also the continuation of a student body vice president a few years ago who started keeping some packaged goods in her office for students to come in, right? So we're co-creating this together, this experience for students to really change what they want to do. And then we help students get involved on campus, right? The more experiences that they have, the more of these experiential learning opportunities that they have, the more meaning that they can make and the more that they can do to make a difference. If you are talking with a student who is interested in getting involved, a student who wants to, particularly on that service side, if they want to volunteer with the pantry, if they want to find those really strong, specific civic engagement things that they can do to make a difference, we have a great student volunteer center here on campus. And Haley works every day to connect students with volunteer opportunities, civic engagement opportunities, to help them make a difference in the community and then make meaning and learn from those. As you can email Volunteer Center and she'll put you on the mailing list to find out those opportunities. One of the things that she is doing right now that I'm really excited about, we, for years, have had the CORD program, where if a student logs 400 hours of community service during their time at OSU, they get an orange cord to graduate with. You're still going to get that, but we've added now different milestones. So students will get things at 50 hours, at 100 hours, at 200 hours. But in order to get those, they're going to have to answer some reflective questions. So it's no longer just about saying, you've reached your threshold, you're good. They're going to have to really engage with the work that they did and think about, how have I learned from that work? And how can I apply what I learned there to the rest of my context and to the rest of the work that I did?
Thank you. That is really exciting. I think that the reflection piece of the CORD program is going to be a great enhancement for it. So really excited to hear that. So what I have on the screen for you here today is what we in career services call career competencies. What we call it when we're speaking with students are career skills, right? Makes it a little bit easier to digest. Not that they couldn't handle the word competency, but it just makes it seem a little bit less intimidating. So NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and this is kind of our go-to professional association where we begin to understand or we dive into understanding best practices for working with employers, best practices for recruiting and hiring students, best practices for coming to campus, what do those jobs look like, what do those internships look like, and how to really help employers frame their opportunities for students in an appropriate way. Well, NACE every single year, so without fail, it's really exciting for us, they do an annual employer survey. So they do a national survey and they ask employers, what do you want to see in the students that you hire? What do you want to see in the candidates? Not necessarily just students, but what do you want to see once they graduate from college and you're taking them on to internship positions or full-time positions? What are those skills that are most important to you? So again, those overarching skills, and we talked a little bit about those with the OSU Grow program, and a little bit about those here. Again, we call them career skills, but these are what those are identified as currently. They change every couple of years, but there's not huge changes in this. So year after year, we see employers wanting students who think critically, right? Students who have talent in communication, leadership, career and self-development. So they take the initiative to demonstrate what they intend to do with their career, and they have the ability to reflect internally and advocate for themselves. Leadership, of course, teamwork, professionalism, technology, equity, and inclusion. And so that one has shifted over the course of the last 5 years or so. It used to be called multicultural awareness, right? Well, I think it's moved from just an awareness to a more action, right? And so now we're literally looking at like how do they demonstrate equity and inclusion in their professionalism. So again, we see a couple of shifts every few years, but they're not so significant that we have to adjust what we're doing significantly. And so this is really good information, I think, just to have and be aware of. The source is cited here, and so again, NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And this is, again, who we go to for when we're talking with students, when we are coming up with programs, when we are sharing information with employers. These are the skills. This is the organization that we go to for those skills, and this is kind of what we build and base a lot of our outreach programming and I would just say programs on this. So really great information and great for us because NACE has done the work for us, so that's pretty exciting. Oh, I thought I pulled that one out. This is just a continuation of that one. I was trying to decide which slide I wanted to use, and landed on one, but so these are the definitions of every single one of those. We don't need to go into that though. So something that you guys can all help with. So as I mentioned, I'm a grad student in the HESA program here. I'm going to finish in December. Yeah. Don't clap yet. Do what?
Are you coming to graduation?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I have teenage daughters, and they have told me that I have no choice, so I'll go with it.
Must do the pomp and the circumstance.
Well, we'll see how that goes. Again, December is coming up. But of course, anybody who is familiar with the HESA, well, probably any graduate program, recognize that there's always an end of the year or the end of the experience project, right? And so I'm working on my creative component. It's going to wrap up this semester. And what I am analyzing is, and then really kind of finding the literature for and creating the literature for, is employers' perceptions of these experiential learning activities that students participate in. There's lots of research that says it's good for students, it helps with student development, it helps with their careers, it helps with career building. There's not a lot of research. There's certainly a gap in how do employers really feel about this, right? And so that's where I'm focusing in on the recruiting process and the recruiting cycle. How does an employer really read that on a resume? Do they recognize what experiential learning one is? But then also, like, how does my community work? How does my service engagement? How does my civic experiences? How much weight do those hold on a resume, right? And that can really help students navigate through what goes on that one-page document that employers want to see, right? So I'm working with the Center for Public Life at OSU Tulsa. We're working through the IRB process right now to create a survey, evaluation essentially, and literally ask employers these questions. So I would say if you are interested in participating and filling out that survey for me, if you hire graduates in full-time or internship positions, I would be happy to hear your information. So just email me, and I will make sure that you receive that once that is created in the next month. Because again, what we're trying to do is close that gap on what does that really look like for employers? What are they really looking at so that we can best serve students and guide them appropriately. So let's just recap real quick. Oh, that's where we're going. We have shared with you guys kind of how out of the classroom experiences build career skills, what that has looked like in several different arenas, service, civic, student employment, Greek life, activities, organizations, right? It looks a little bit different, but at the end of the day, it's all tied to that experience and those skills that they're building as a result of those experiences. We have talked a lot about reflection. Anytime that you have an opportunity to, in your programs, in your conversations, in your interactions with students, anytime you have an opportunity to help them reflect on what they've done, it's going to go really far for them. And you don't have to have the answer to whatever you're reflecting on. You just need to help them start analyzing their actions, right? So helping them reflect, kind of guiding that is a great strategy. And I look forward to the spring when we talk about how to facilitate those conversations too. And then the final piece we have here is empower your students to co-create. They don't have to have visions of themselves as a nonprofit director when they grow up, right? They don't have to envision themselves as serving on 5 board of directors in their community when they grow up. Making a difference and being a change maker happens where they're at, wherever they are, regardless of the industry, regardless of their position, regardless of what space they are in. Being a change maker can happen anywhere. And so really helping them recognize that will go really far for our students here at OSU. But do you have any questions? That's all we have for you guys today. These are our sources. Holler if you have any questions about any of them. Any parting words?
Yeah, I would just say we will pop up the QR code again. So if you have not had a chance to check in, please do so. And if there's things you want to talk more about, questions you have, now is we'd love to do so now. Yes?
Who was the creator or the theorist for Cocreate?
Voigt, V-O-Y-T-E. Harry Voigt. Civic professionalism is the actual overarching discipline,
Okay.
but co-create is a part of that.
It's, what was it, professional, something?
Civic
Civic.
professionalism.
You should get a survey this afternoon or possibly this morning about today, ask what you learned today. It's also going to ask you for ideas for future topics. And so we are working right now on setting up next semester's series. So if you have things that you want to learn more about how to develop students, student development, student growth, student learning, please put those in there and we will be excited to see those in a future session. So thank you all for being here next month on Gen Z and generational differences. So thanks everybody.